Reselling sports cards changed my life, and today I'm going to tell you how it might change yours. You see, I grew up in the hobby. I collected David Robinson, Drew Bledsoe, and the Kansas City Royals. In the early 1990s, you didn't have all the zebra and tiger parallels, you definitely didn't have the embedded cleat relics, and you absolutely didn't have 55 different one-of-ones in a product. You see, collecting 30 years ago was simple. Collecting 75 years ago was even more simple. That simplicity is what helped build this worldwide phenomena of card collectors. We had a card we wanted, we'd go find it, and we'd add it to our collection. Rinse and repeat. This mindset is all that was needed for sports cards to really change my life. Let me explain. My name's Ty Wilson. I've been reselling sports cards for 2 decades, and this channel exists to help ordinary people build their extraordinary reselling business. Now, I've been a sports card collector my entire life, from the elementary playground to the 90s card shows, all the way through the pandemic resurgence. I have been collecting sports cards. But like anyone who's a collector, I wanted my collection to be valuable. I mean, we all buy these little pieces of cardboard because they mean something to us, but don't fake it. We absolutely want them to go up in value. We don't want them to go down in value. The degree that a collector may care will vary. Some pay close attention, others are more wrapped up in nostalgia, and they don't really care about the money as much, but they care. Even if they won't fully admit it to you now, they care. And this is important because this understanding actually helps shift the way I view reselling. But early on, I was a collector. I was a card trader, someone who just loved the overall hunt of building a sports card collection. But in the late 90s and early 2000s, I dabbled in eBay and I resold much of my childhood collection to provide some much needed disposable income. This was not a business though. It was an outlet for cash. Well, fast forward. 18 years ago, I was early in my marriage and I needed to create some buffer in my finances. My wife was still in school, and I was grinding it out in the corporate world, making a measly $28,000 a year plus commissions. But we had school loans, we had credit card debt, and we had almost zero room for error in our finances. So I needed a way to create some margin in our bank account. It had been a few years since I resold sports cards during the early eBay evolution, but it was definitely still fresh on my mind. Should I jump back into selling sports cards? Maybe that was the answer. Now keep in mind, in 2006 to 2010, eBay was still in its infant phase. There wasn't any automation tools or secondary platforms to help accelerate the card selling business. It was a grind. To sort, to scan, to title, to ship sports cards, all of that was hard, and eBay was really trying to figure out how sports cards would fit in their overall business plan. Well, in 2007, with a good friend of mine, Josh, I decided to really jump into reselling as a side hustle. But instead of focusing on sports cards, we experimented with clothing, computer accessories, phones, and a few other categories. We needed to create cash, so we thought we could go resell a variety of things to start building an empire. Well, this was a disaster. With clothing, we failed because we attempted women's clothing and we underestimated the necessary attention to detail that was required, from sizing to photos, etc. We had a lot of unhappy buyers.
Build eBay account number 1.
We also missed the mark on computer accessories because we purchased a pallet from a few suppliers and didn't realize how much of it was not working or Chinese counterfeit hardware.
Build eBay account number 2.
But we did make a splash selling used cell phones. Unfortunately, our source for inventory wasn't a long-term option, and T-Mobile wasn't a fan of us reselling SIM cards with the phones, and we got flagged.
Build eBay account number 3.
From 2007 to 2009, I paid a very hefty stupid tax, and what was supposed to create financial freedom ended up creating more financial stress. But the story doesn't stop there. You see, in 2010, after mentally regrouping, I convinced my wife that I could resell sports cards. And as any man knows, convincing your wife that sports cards are more than worthless pieces of cardboard is a feat by itself. But I was convinced, and I slowly started jumping back in. And it was during this phase that I learned one of the most important lessons that I've ever learned. Gambling to make money doesn't justify gambling. In sports cards, much of the pizzazz comes from the world of opening packs and pulling out glorious cards. Even in 2010, you could open Topps Finest or Allen and Ginter, and you could find incredibly rare cards that would sell for 2 to 3 times the price of the box of cards. So what do you think the majority of sports card collectors and resellers were drawn to? That's right, they were drawn to opening packs and boxes of cards. The entire industry started to really shift in the early 2000s as manufacturers realized perceived scarcity could drive grown men and women mad as they chased these rare cards. Don't get me wrong, it was a blast during that phase. Ripping packs, chasing big hits, and selling everything in the process was fun. That is until the reality caught up with me. The success of my reselling business was completely dependent on luck. I had been swiping my debit and credit card for thousands of dollars just to put my success into the hands of a pure gamble. I'd buy a case for $500 and I'd go resell it all for $375. I'd go grab another case or box for $700 and I'd get lucky and sell it for $850. I'd go get the next few boxes for $300 and I'd go resell them for $140. There was this illusion that this was working, but it was only an illusion. I kept fighting the trend, thinking I'd outlucky the odds, but the house always wins every time. Either I never hit the right cards or I'd hit the right cards and not account for all the time it would take just to resell myself back to break even. During this grind, I learned how to resell things. I figured out how to market correctly, titles, images, description, all of that stuff. All these things I learned as I battled my stupidity and misunderstanding of the game. But what I didn't learn during this period was how to build a profitable reselling business. Yes, profitable. You see, that word doesn't seem to exist in the vocabulary of many resellers. I'll oftentimes have a conversation with a reseller these days, and they'll tell me that they've sold thousands of dollars last year on eBay. And I'll briefly share in their excitement, and then I'll ask, hey, what were your profit margins? Silence. That's when it gets awkward. You see, selling something is okay, it's great, but selling something and making money is completely different. And if you are a reseller, that is your goal every single time. So back to my story. You see, I made mistake after mistake, but through the mistakes, I somehow avoided total catastrophe and I kept my head above water, albeit barely above water. But then in late 2010, we started having children. What a blessing. These little treasures bring so much joy to your life, but do you know what they bring to your bank account? Yeah. And then in 2015, we had a few more kids. So I looked to reselling one more time. Maybe I could finally crack the code. I wanted to make this work. You see, certain people have this entrepreneur bug in their DNA. Whether reselling or starting some sort of side business, this is what gets their juices flowing. And that's me. And I still had this passion for sports cards. I love the hobby. This time around though, I decided to have a game plan that didn't involve 100% luck. So I spent weeks looking at the data that I had available. What were the top brands? Who were the top sellers? What was increasing in value? What was collapsing? Which of these got me excited? It was during this time that I uncovered 3 reselling principles that absolutely changed my life. Truly. These 3 things have been refined over the years, but they originated almost 10 years ago out of sheer desperation. Before I share these, I'd appreciate if you do 2 things for me. First, you can lightly tap that like button and subscribe to the channel. Second, do yourself a favor and subscribe to my free email list below. I have some big news coming in a few weeks and you're gonna wanna be in the know. You'll also get this entire video script sent to you immediately. Okay, the 3 things that I uncovered starting in 2015. First, the top resellers were selling the same things over and over again. That's right. Nearly every top seller in every category was essentially on repeat. They were marketing and crushing it within a smaller window inside their larger category. They had conquered their own little worlds inside this massive ecosystem. This revelation was huge for me because it clearly demonstrated that the top resellers weren't leaving it up to chance. They learned what worked, they mastered it, and they became laser focused on owning that niche. Is it niche? Niche. In sports cards though, this was noticing certain sellers that were selling lots of the same eras. Some were selling complete sets, master sets, insert sets. Some were selling only graded cards of particular players or years. The top sellers were experts in their subcategory every single time. And after more digging, I realized this pinpoint focus led to them selling for higher prices than the market averages, which allowed them the freedom to buy more aggressively. They removed much of the risk by buying exactly what they knew they could sell. So simple, but so profound. The second thing I noticed was the top resellers viewed dimes and quarters as more important than dollars. You see, these resellers were moving items faster than the rest of the market. Sometimes it would be a few percentage points cheaper, but they moved exponentially more inventory. This philosophy went against everything the community teaches you. You get a great card of a rising star or a Hall of Famer, and you want to maximize your value and sell for top dollar. Obviously, there's nothing wrong with this, but the top resellers are willing to sacrifice a few dollars to make a few quarters, because a few quarters multiplied by another few quarters and then multiplied by another few quarters equals a lot more dollars. This is a much more deeper and more complex topic, but the cold, hard truth is that the best resellers understand that waiting for appreciation is a fool's game. The more sustainable model is learning how to make lots of small wins and using that cash flow to put into lots more small wins. Compounding your money with cash flow is the most powerful unlock in the reselling game, and most resellers don't do it. The third thing that I uncovered happened around 2016, and I was asking questions to some of the top resellers, just begging for insight. And one of the resellers told me in an email that almost half of his revenue comes from repeat customers, and many of them now buy from him directly outside of eBay. Mind blown. This was in 2016, when trying to communicate with someone outside of eBay was like learning a completely different language. You'd be like, you can message me space, my portable PHONE number is 8 you guys know what I'm talking about if you're from that era. Here's what this meant though. He had created expertise in his subcategory. Buyers knew that he was going to have certain types of inventory, and he dominated that niche. He then demonstrated that he was not going to get caught up in milking every buyer for maximum profit. He was fair. He sacrificed a few dollars for a few quarters. And because of that, the loyalty for his business grew, and buyers only wanted to buy from him. He then could purchase product knowing that he already lined buyers up, and he added an immediate 10% to his bottom line because he was selling direct. When you become the expert and you run your operation like a top reselling business, people want to deal with you. I discovered that if you focus and you sell right, you'll build loyalty to your brand that will transform your growth. In 2017, I approached reselling completely different. Yes, I was still a sports card collector and I still love hoarding sports cards. But to finally create that buffer in my family's bank account, I had to think like a top reseller and not like a nervous gambler. You have to stop hoping that you'll strike it rich with one lucky pack rip, and you have to put that effort into building expertise and knowledge in what you love. Since 2017, reselling sports cards has led to me being able to travel the United States telling amazing stories through chasing cardboard. It's allowed me to involve all of my kids in this adventure in various degrees and even allow them to earn money for their own personal journeys. Reselling sports cards eventually helped create financial freedom in my life and also helped me build up a personal collection of cards that I love sharing with my family. Reselling sports cards has changed my life. It was not a straight line, but it definitely changed my life. And this journey can be yours. I truly hope that you get to enjoy it the way I have. So I recommend stepping back, finding ways to remove the risk and the stupidity that ruins so many resellers, learn to be an expert, compound your success, and start building a brand that transforms your life. If you want more specific reselling advice, check out this video right here. Take care.